It is Wednesday. That means it's time for Huddle Up. No Bucky Brooks this week. JP Shadrick with you in London. John Oehser, as always, our special guest today, the voice of the NFL in the United Kingdom. It's Neil Reynolds from Sky Sports joining us as the Jaguars get ready to head up to Spurs to play the Buffalo Bills Sunday at 2:30 kickoff time in London, 9:30 in Jacksonville. Coming off a win last week, the Jaguars 2-2, the Bills 3-1. Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. John, how are you? What's up?
I'm great. London, and I think Bucky's like 9 or 10 time zones away, so
right.
Can't expect him to be here for that.
Exactly. And Neil, thanks for the time today. We really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, it's great being here. Not too far from my home. Not as far away as
Not 10
Bucky
time
is.
zones?
No,
Okay.
no, definitely not. Just down the road. So this is easy.
So here we are. First time an NFL team has played back-to-back games in London. We'll get to all the storylines for the Jaguars coming up. They were on the practice field today. We'll hear from Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence. They both spoke with the media. All that coming up. But finally having a team back-to-back weeks, that's a big step for the UK marketplace.
It is. We've taken steps over the years. You think the first game was 2007. It was just one game per year. Then there was the big step to 2 games per year. Then there was the first time a team didn't have a bye week after a London game. All these different ways of testing this market. And the Jags, as always, are leading the way in that in terms of looking at the international growth, helping the international growth. So yeah, this is huge. To have a team stay in market, play back-to-back games, and again, it never gets old. It was so special to see 85,000 people at Wembley Stadium, and the Jags' efforts are really paying off. You see more and more Trevor Lawrence jerseys with each year.
Yeah, I thought Sunday was as home crowdish as it's been yet, and it's been increasing. They still need to get Sweet Caroline the timing right, right. Which was fantastic. It was really cool. There's still moments where, cheering for the punts, it's terrific. And it did feel for the first time, to me, like there were moments where the crowd was really a factor for the Jaguars. Maybe the first time, but maybe the most time that it's been in the 10 games now, JP.
You know where it will be the most impactful, though, with this back-to-back, if it's successful for the team doing it, right? Not only on the field, but off the field as well.
Yeah, and I think the Jags do a great job of making some noise when they're here. They make sure that they have the fan events and all of the different things. I think, the coach will want back-to-back wins. That's, of course, the priority in any NFL team, any NFL season. But so long as things go smoothly, and I have no reason to believe they won't, then I think we'll see more and more examples of back-to-back games. And I like your ambition if you think that those British NFL fans with 6 pints inside them are going to have rhythm and sing Sweet Caroline nicely. I don't think that's
I thought the execution was terrific.
Just the time is a little tad off.
Trevor's
the way it
on
just
the field.
powered over the third and fourth quarter, I will not forget that. That was cool.
Yeah, really cool stuff. Hey, let's get to the storylines of the day for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Back on the practice field, they changed hotels after the game Sunday at Wembley. They moved over to Hanbury Manor, northeast of London, a little further out in the countryside. A Marriott Resort with a nice golf course on property there. We were out there today for a little bit, and the Jags have a practice field there. Before practice, the big story this week, Cam Robinson is eligible to return from his suspension after 4 weeks off. He is in London, and head coach Doug Peterson asked about the left tackle.
Another leader, another veteran player, somebody who's played, a lot of games there at left tackle. There's a physicality there, and a mindset that he brings. And, I think there could be a little bit of a comfort level, with the entire stability, let's call it stability with the offensive line.
So there's been a lot going on the offensive line this year. Of course, Walker Little starting there. They've had some changes at left guard. Tyler Shatley started the game at Wembley on Sunday. The right side has had some pressure against them at times early in this season, John. So what else did you hear? What do you take away from what Doug Peterson said that, hey, it's day-to-day. Let's see how he goes this week.
Well, I thought it was interesting that he said Luke Fortner will absolutely start at center. There had been a little speculation that maybe you move Shatley over to center to get a little more power, but Doug was as pointed as I've heard him in a while, saying, no, Luke's our guy there. How does Cam help? I've been asked that a couple times today. There's a reason he's started since 2017 at left tackle. You have your best players starting in the NFL. You paid him a couple years ago. He's their best left tackle. And he also, JP, you know this, he's the leader of that offensive line. He's the guy who on the sidelines will get in people's face. The way I do you, JP. Come on, let's get going.
Time. Yeah, I always respond.
He'll get them going a little bit. They respect him, meaning all offensive players. If there's a little scrap on defense between a guy, Cam's going to be the guy over there. So and there's something about him, JP. They all like to play football, but Cam's a football player, played at your school, Alabama, likes being out there, is always into it. Can't really understand on the sidelines if guys are down. He's sort of that energy. So I think they want him back there. He's a little bit up. I was told as far back as 17. He's sort of the spirit of this thing when he's out there. Maybe that's overstating a little bit, but he brings that element, and I think he's important for those reasons.
He's one of the few guys, Neil, that was around in that 2017 playoff run. He's been here for a long time.
Right, and I think, I don't know all of the switching out in terms of the offensive line, who goes here or who goes where, but as John said, you play your best players.
Yeah, starters start for a reason.
You play your best players, and you find a way to figure out where you shuffle along the line. And as we know in the trenches, in the offensive line, you can't have enough bodies. It's going to be an attritional season, always is, and that position's vital. Look at what happened to Miami against Buffalo last week when Teron Armstead went out. That game changed quite a bit, and potentially here comes Von Miller.
That's true. Yeah, this will be a week to get the offensive line right if Von Miller is rolling out there.
And Cam's good at everything, but he's a really good run blocker. And they had trouble with that last week. They've had trouble in short yardage. Adding Cam, putting Walker Little where he is, gives you two. They need something in the interior. Cam's not interior, but he sort of plays left tackle like an interior guy, that kind of brawler a little bit. It can't hurt because they need help on the offensive line right now.
And then the other question is Walker Little, who's been playing pretty well at left tackle already in this season and played well at the end of last season when Cam Robinson was banged up. What happens with him, John?
Yeah, Doug didn't say it, but in his answer you kind of heard. He went to Walker Little first when he was talking about Cam coming back and getting, I don't know if it was chemistry, but he said alongside, and then he mentioned Walker Little first, and he said, or Tyler Shatley. I would guess they move Walker Little, and he's been playing so well. He's been their best offensive lineman so far. So you're in a little bit of a dilemma. You would love if Cam played a different position, and you leave Walker Little. Cam's always played left tackle. Walker's moved around a little more. I think you move Walker Little into left guard, and then see how it goes from there. It doesn't feel set in stone yet, but I think that's closer to where they thought they would be.
And Anton Harrison, first-round pick this year, is playing at right tackle. You don't really want to pull him off the field.
No, I think, again, that's absolutely. So it's somewhere in the inside, one of the guard positions. Again, and we've seen players over the years move from tackle to guard. And, again, I just think you can't have enough of those players. We spend so much time, and quite rightly, looking at Trevor Lawrence, looking at Calvin Ridley, looking at Travis Etienne. Can't do any of that stuff without the guys up front, right? And that's why it's probably not been quite what we expected yet.
Yeah, I mean, the timing's been a bit off, right? I mean, because there's been things in front of Trevor's face, and all of a sudden the timing's off to the wide receiver or whatever. They can't get the run game consistently, and that builds up. So it starts up front, both sides of the football. Doug's talked about that on defense as well, but they finally got going last week. We'll get to the defense coming up in just a little bit. We are live at the Pavilion End, 23 Watling Street in central London, in the shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral. JP Shadrick, John Oehser, and Neil Reynolds of Sky Sports NFL and the Inside the Huddle podcast. When can we find that and where?
What do they say? Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, wherever fine podcasts are downloaded.
Yeah, it drops every Wednesday, so we talk all the big news of the season, preview games coming up. So, it's wherever you get them.
Well, I mean, what are you going to say about this last week's game?
So I did talk about that. I did talk about the fact that, to me, it never gets old, this. And from 2007, we had the one game, and then it's just got bigger and bigger. And some people, obviously, we're growing new fans all the time, so they get used to having games in the UK. I worked for the league when we had NFL Europe, and we struggled to get people to come and watch the London Monarchs. And I was a fan before that when you could have we had an American Bowl at the end of August, and the starters, you blink and you miss them, and then that's it. And the NFL would pack up and leave. So I've seen what it was like. So last week wasn't a Sky game, it was an ITV game. Yep. So I was there pre-game working for the Jags, doing some stuff. And then I had to leave, but I wanted to stay until kickoff. I have to see kickoff, right? Just so I could say I was there. Yeah. And I watched Trevor running out of the tunnel, and all the Jags flags are waving. And will never take it for granted. No matter how many games they give us, it's special. So that's what I talked about this week quite a bit, just how we're fortunate. We're fortunate.
It's hard to believe, JP. We've been doing this for 10 years now.
10.
Coming over. And I can remember the first one where it really felt like a novelty. And it always feels special. But I think what Neil's getting at, too, is it doesn't feel like a novelty anymore.
So here's a great example of it. My daughter is 15. She was at the game. She was annoyed that Sweet Caroline was still singing while Trevor and the offense was on the field. She's 15. So she's learned that you're supposed to be quiet.
Right.
All right, I love that. Plenty ahead. Let's come back in a moment. We'll get into this Jaguars defense and what they did last week against Atlanta and the challenge ahead this week against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, who are red hot coming in. If you're a Jags fan who's always on the move, we've got the perfect plan for you with the Bundle at the Bank. You can purchase tickets to 3 or more games starting at just $58 per game. Get the flexibility you want for your time this fall at jaguars.com/tickets or call 904-633-2000. We are off and running. It is Huddle Up.
He's a great player, obviously. We played against him 2 years ago, and I remember going into that game, and just the threat that he poses, running the ball, throwing the ball, extending plays. Obviously, not just him, their offense, their receivers, their line, their backs. I think all those guys are capable of making plays, and obviously it starts with him and just his ability, I think.
Trevor Lawrence earlier today after practice at Hanbury Manor. Welcome back to the Pavilion End Pub, Watling Street, Central London. It is Huddle Up without Bucky Brooks today. He is in Los Angeles. JP Shadrick, John Oehser here in London with Neil Reynolds from Sky Sports, the NFL presenter, the voice of the NFL in the UK. That should be your title, voice of the NFL in the UK.
That's a lot to get on a business card,
I suppose it is, but it's true. You've been doing this for so long now. I mean, you were the authority here.
So at a fan event last year at Battersea, and there's another fan event this coming Saturday building up to the game, there was a guy who was kind of hyping the crowd, and he introduced me as the godfather of the NFL. Now, I don't know if that's good or if that's like you're getting really old, but yeah I was going to walk in like you get people to kiss the ring and stuff, but I couldn't quite pull it off.
That would be interesting for sure. Hey, coming up, we'll have some fan opportunity to ask some questions. So I have some questions ready back in our audience here. Thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate it, getting ready for this ball game coming up. And we just heard Trevor Lawrence here talking about the Bills quarterback, Josh Allen. And it is, he's red hot right now. A perfect passer rating last week in the Bills win over the Dolphins. The first time that an NFL quarterback's had a perfect rating since 2020. Tom Brady did it that season against the Lions. It's been a little bit, but he was efficient. He had 5 total touchdowns in the game, 4 through the air, 1 on the ground. He's big, he's mobile, he's got the big arm. And, yes, this is a different challenge, I'd say, than the Atlanta Falcons last week, John.
Well, it's sometimes it starts feeling like team's year. And, I know it's a Jaguars show, but to me this is starting to feel like a year where the Bills might be really special. And that's sort of obvious. You scored this many points. But nobody's really talking about them a whole lot in the offseason. Remember, JP? Everybody's talking about the Jets. Remember the Jets, Jets,
I do.
Jets?
That was a while ago.
That was the whole thing. And then they come out and they lose the opener, and then all of a sudden everybody's talking about the Dolphins. Well, the Bills are the second highest scoring team in the NFL. Only 11 points behind a team that scored 70 one week. So this team is really going. I think they are emerging as the AFC favorites. It's a week-to-week league, so hopefully we're not saying that Sunday, JP. But I think the Jaguars need a defensive game. They're not going to hold them to 6 like they did a couple years ago. But they need that thing where if Bills Josh Allen has a kryptonite, it's that every few games he'll sort of all of a sudden have brain fades and where there's picks and there's mistakes. I think the Jaguars hope, and this is not a wing and a prayer, the Jaguars are a really good turnover-forcing team. It's become the identity of their defense.
Yep.
They have forced turnovers, forced 3 in 3 of the 4 games this year. The other ones, they had none. They ain't winning if they get none. They need 2 or 3 in this game to beat the Bills.
Got to take it away, Neil, from this guy. And I know you had a chance to visit with really both Josh Allens this summer. Let's talk about the Bills' Josh Allen first. What stood out about that conversation with him?
Motivation. So they've been kind of crowned in various preseasons in recent years. And as John mentioned and alluded to, this preseason they were kind of not written off, but they were overlooked.
A little bit, yeah.
We heard about the Super Bowl window is starting to close. What happened to them at home against the Bengals? Josh Allen believes they've got the strongest roster since he's been there. I think they've taken that little chip on the shoulder, which they couldn't use necessarily in previous years. Certainly, I felt that was a significant factor against the Dolphins last week. All the world was talking about was Miami's 700 points, 700 yards. That would have been quite impressive.
I mean, they were close enough.
726 yards and 70 points. That's all they were talking about. So the Bills really made a statement. And I think last week was your kind of classic Josh Allen highlight. If you're going to have one that shows everything that's good about Buffalo's Josh Allen, that was it. As John said, though, if you get some pressure on him and he starts to feel like he has to put the game on his shoulders and play hero ball, he will give you chances.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah, and remember you referenced that game back in 2021, the first Josh Allen Bowl, where the Jaguars' Josh Allen went off in that game. It was a 9-6 final. Jaguars won the game at the bank. Jaguars' Josh Allen had 8 tackles in the game. He had a sack. He had an interception. He had a fumble recovery. He did everything but collect tickets that day, I think, at the gate coming in. And you need another Josh Allen Jaguars day to get this done.
Yeah, that may have been, I've been doing this a while, may have been the most improbable upset I've seen in a while. That was the Urban Meyer year. The Jaguars were not a good team, and they were sort of a mess. The Bills were good and couldn't do anything. The Jaguars had a couple of stops. They got the breaks that you need in that kind of a game. But it was Jaguars linebacker Josh Allen's day. The good news is, as good as he was that day, and that was his career day at that point, he's had a couple of them this year. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could get a couple of sacks, impact this thing. I think he's got to have the other day, you could tell early Josh had a big sack, and it energized everything with him. I think you need that in the first couple of series from him this week. To sort of get the guys going to say, okay, this is going to be Josh's day. Now let's support it. It's a big task, but Josh Allen, Jags Josh Allen, is the key.
Yeah, Neil.
I was smiling when you said about Josh Allen against Josh Allen because Jags Josh Allen, I've been on tour with the last 2 summers, the player tours around the UK and Northern Ireland. And the first one of those was we talked about the game against the Bills. And, I mean, talk about players getting their motivation any way they can. Jacksonville's Josh Allen is genuinely annoyed there is another Josh Allen in the NFL. He actually used it as motivation. He told me, he was telling me, I kind of started to go there as a joke. And he was like, no, I'm Josh Allen in the NFL. I mean, talk about find your motivation. But he will be up for this game for the weirdest of reasons. And one of them is because there's another Josh Allen on the field.
The Jags win. He might go taunt Josh Allen's parents for naming him that.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I was here too.
Where you get it.
I was here too. This is Huddle Up from the Pavilion End, Watling Street in central London. JP Shadrick, John Oehser, and Neil Reynolds of Sky Sports joining us here on the show today in the pub. And let's get a little deeper into this Jaguars defense and the effort last week against the Falcons. Now, it's a Falcons offense that is run heavy, tight end heavy. They don't have real explosion on the outside. They've got a young quarterback. However, the Jags defense got it done. 4 sacks total, 3 of those from Josh Allen, the other from Trayvon Walker, 3 takeaways in the game. They forced Ritter to toss it up, John. And, hey, when it's up in the air, as you just referenced a moment ago, they can go get it. That is their calling card. And they did it with a pick 6. They did it with Andre Sisco as well. And got the job done defensively. And they've had a few strong defensive efforts this year, minus that Texans game, really.
Well, there was so much talk all offseason about what the Jaguars weren't on defense. So much talk about the pass rush. It didn't have a dominant pass rusher. Well, I think Josh Allen might be becoming that. It was not a balanced overall pass rush. Well, in 3 of the first 4 games, I thought they affected Mahomes. I thought for playing a mobile quarterback the first week, they did a good job against Anthony Richardson, and I thought they harassed Ritter on Sunday. I don't think they're the league's best pass rush, but this is a defense that, except for about a 3 or 4 game period last year where things in October were just sort of not clear for this team, it has consistently produced turnovers at a high rate. 4th in the league last year, 4th in the league this year. I've said the stat over and over this week. 9 turnovers this year. Until they stop doing it, they are a good turnover-producing team. I think that's what you have to accept their identity is. They're not Blitzburg where they're going to get 70 sacks, but they are turnover town, JP. How about that? Turnover town.
You just make that up?
How about that? Well,
That should go on a T-shirt.
It's why they pay me the bucks.
Yeah, not the big ones apparently. Huh? Yeah. So defense. I mean, who stands out from a British perspective about this Jaguars defense? We know there's first-round picks on this team, but who are the stars in your eyes?
So I think John's kind of alluded to it. That when you're watching the Jags and without trying to delve too deep into the X's and O's, and especially when I'm watching in a studio on a Sunday, we've got the red zone on, we're watching all the games. Every time I look at the Jags, they're flying to the football. They are creating the turnovers. So on a very simple level, they affect quarterbacks. So I think it is Josh Allen. I think Oluokun in the middle kind of hoovers up everything, all the tackles. Yeah. But then even on the back end, like Andre Sisco is a ball hawk. And I think Rayshawn Jenkins actually, he doesn't ever look like the biggest of players, but he packs more of a punch than you would think.
He has not much fear in there.
Fearless player,
yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say the way I would describe is that they catch your eye. They catch your eye with that kind of energy, and that sort of we had the game against the Chiefs on Sky Sports. That was one of our main games. They had the Chiefs. Yeah. They had Mahomes. They just didn't finish on offense, but defense. You'd say, well, is that everything we could have hoped for in that game, and it was.
Yeah, they're an interesting defense, JP. We talked about it last year. They, I don't know if they're great, but they believe they're great, and they play like it, and they don't ever, like last year, so many games, they're behind by 10, they're behind by 12. Maybe they give up a big play, but they keep playing. The Tennessee game at the end of last year where they got the big play at the end. The Dallas game where they gave up, 34 points, pick 6 in overtime. That theme went throughout their season. They play hard every play. They know that their job is to basically break serve. We're a couple miles from Wimbledon, so use the break serve.
Oh, that's right.
And they believe that the offense is going to score, and their job is occasionally to get the ball back for them and give them that edge. The secondary, as Neil said, has also been very, very good. With the exception, you can't do that in this league because every play counts. But they had two miscommunications against Houston. Beyond that, this has been a really good defensive team this year. And those were a couple of brain fades that seem uncharacteristic. So I think they're a good defense. I don't think they're great, but I think they're a good enough defense that if the offense was playing better, I think more people would be talking about it.
Continuity helps. All those guys are back together another year in the system.
Yeah, and some of them are young and feel like they've got something to prove as well. So that's, Trayvon Walker's going to feel like he's got something to prove this year. Devin Lloyd, compared to how he finished last year, and you get great insight when you're traveling with these guys. I was traveling with Devin Lloyd and Josh Allen, and even you're waiting to board a flight to Northern Ireland, and they're playing some kind of hand games where they're like thumb wars or something. They're always compete. I'm serious. They're competing all the time. And actually, you talk to them about the Chargers comeback game.
Right.
Josh was convinced they were winning that game. And that's the mentality you're talking about. Whether it's right or wrong, I think you have to have that if you're an elite player in the NFL. I think they've got a nice edge to them. They want to prove themselves, but there's a nice mix of young players and proven veterans already. So I like where they're going on defense. I think, as John said, they would be in much better shape if the offense had finished some of the drives that they haven't been able to finish inside the 20.
Let's face it, they played well to beat the Chiefs.
Oh, sure. They held them to 17.
And so everybody on this team's bad game was against Houston, who may not be that bad, JP.
They're 2-2, just like the Jaguars. Hey, Neil, could John make it at the All England Lawn and Tennis Club?
Not wearing that Jaguars top. No, you need some white clothes on.
That's true. Okay. That's true. It is...
Need to go shopping.
I'm a big tennis guy, Neil, so I knew that.
Okay.
He knows where to go before he heads south.
I don't know what his backhand's like either, so
No, I've got no skill, but I love the sport.
You'll give it a go.
I do love the sport.
Plenty ahead. Jags fans want customized Jaguars furniture for your home. Check out zipchair.com and browse all customizable options. Zipchair, furniture for fans. Plenty ahead. We're about halfway home on this episode of Huddle Up. We've got fan questions coming up from down in the basement here at the Pavilion End. Yeah, there they are. They're fired up finally about that. That's coming up in a little while. A little more London game talk as the Jaguars get ready for the Buffalo Bills at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this Sunday at 2:30 London time, 9:30 on the East Coast. Back in a moment. This is Huddle Up. Central London in the shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral. The Jaguars and the Bills coming up. Week 5, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the site in North London. JP Shadrick, John Oehser, and Neil Reynolds of Sky Sports. It's Huddle Up on Wednesday without Bucky Brooks. He's in Los Angeles. He'll be back for the game, actually, on Sunday. Came for the game.
International Buck.
Flew all the way back to L.A. to do work all week. And he's flying back again, I think, on whenever he's flying back. Ahead of Sunday at 2:30. He might walk in at like 2:29.
Does he like coffee?
That's what he does.
Does he like coffee?
He's about to.
Yeah, I think he's going to.
I think.
Whether he likes it or not, he's going to get a whole bunch of it.
He's going to get it some way, that's for sure. So, in front of a live audience, thank you all for coming again. We appreciate it here. The Jags and the Bills coming up. The second of 3 London games this year. NFL has the deal with Spurs for 2 games per year minimum there at that stadium. The Jaguars have their deal directly with Wembley. And now there are 2 Germany games on the docket as well. The Mexico game is out for the foreseeable, year or 2 because of the renovations down at Azteca. So they've got to get another game in, and those sold out in a hurry. But this is trending in a big way in Europe right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how quickly the games sell out, and we had 3 games back to back to back. That's kind of testing the market as well and testing the fans because fans come from all over the country, and it's not always easy to get to a football stadium and get yourself there and buy the tickets first of all. So it's no small feat to have 3 games in a row, and those tickets sell out very, very quickly. In Germany, do you know there were 4.5 million people in the queue to buy those tickets for those 2 games?
Really?
4.5 million people trying to get tickets to the Chiefs, Dolphins, and the Patriots and Colts.
How big
It's like a
stadium?
Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah, so
That stadium's only about 50,000, so that's in terms of the hottest ticket in the NFL this year, that's probably it outside of the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. So you look at the success and it starts at the gate, and then it's how the teams are looked after. I think it continues to go from strength to strength. I think the NFL does a great job of, I mentioned earlier, kind of with the preseason games, they used to come in and then they would disappear. The Jags have an operation here that's year-round. Like we said, we did the summer player tours, the Jag Tag program. NFL are doing the same with their flag football. There's an NFL Academy, the Jaguars Foundation, the NFL Foundation. They are foundations. They are firm foundations. And from the trusted UK base, the NFL's now been able to expand out. So Germany, that's because you don't want it to fail. So you want it to. You're only going to expand once you know it works.
Yeah.
So they moved to Germany. Do they look at Spain? Do they look at other places?
That was the report the other day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So they've been looking at that. I see no reason why they wouldn't do that because they've established such a footing in the UK that they can now start to spread out throughout Europe. So it's, I kind of liken it when people ask me, it's not dissimilar to Formula One, where you kind of have a traveling road show. I think we may start to see that with more NFL games played around the world. It's not going to go back the other way. I'd be surprised to see it suddenly disappear,
Yeah, I think the point we made at the top of the show is that, it felt, you were here in 13, JP, when we came over, and it was cool, but it felt like a novelty the first time.
Yep.
It's not a novelty anymore. This is a thing that they do, and they know it works, and they know how to work it. So credit to the Jaguars and the NFL for growing this to where you don't, again, feel like a novelty. It's the best way I can say it.
Yeah. I mean, now the next step, Neil, would there be beyond the Spain and all these other ideas of markets? Could they expand more in Germany? I mean,
look at that. Well, I don't know the maths of it. I'm trying to work it out, but they could sell out a season in Germany. I mean, there's no way they would not do that, and I asked this question of the commissioner kind of cheekily last year. I was doing an event with Roger Goodell, and I said,
cheeky with Goodell. What about
I tried.
Wow.
I mean, and I said, we've got games at Wembley, we've got games at Tottenham, and I said we've got games alternating between Munich and Frankfurt. I said, Commissioner, I always ask you for a London franchise or a franchise. Could we please have a division in Europe? And I thought he was just going to laugh it off. And he went, well, that's actually something we've started to look at down the road.
Wow.
So, there's always all that anyone can do in the UK and Germany is lay the table, make sure there's enough fans for those games to keep coming. And whether they come via a franchise or if they just keep coming in the Formula One style that I mentioned, I think either way, there's no sign of it slowing down. Even after all the years of London games, and last year Germany was the kind of shiny new toy, and everyone was excited, and Rich Eisen was there, excited about Take Me Home Country Roads. They sang over the play there in Germany as well.
And didn't they stick around like an hour after
they
the game?
Did stay.
Too?
That was it. Right, I'll tell you, that was incredible. But the fact is, London's been here for so long, but the games still sell out so quickly. So, but the Germany one, we were doing that for Sky Sports, and we were kind of wrapping the game, and we're on air for about 20 or 30 minutes afterwards, looking at all the highlights, talking about the game. And I kind of turned behind me. I was like, there's 35, 40,000 people still here, just having a party. It was like a beer festival, and just in the middle was like an American football game.
They happen to have a little entertainment on the field at the same time. It's the Jaguars' second trip to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium coming up. They played there, of course, in 2021 and beat the Dolphins in a wild one. I mean, the field goals taking the scenic route to get there, and they won it 23-20 in just a crazy finish. The broadcast crew for the Jags did not travel that trip, so this is our first opportunity. John, you weren't there to see the stadium, and just looking at it on television, and it looks like an incredible showplace for the NFL in the UK.
It is a sensational stadium, and I always say if you picked up that stadium and put it anywhere in North America, it would look like an NFL stadium. It's authentic. It looks the part. It looks like it reminds me a little bit of Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. It's a little bit like that. You're very on top of all the action. So it is, yeah. And I think again, this is another step which we would never have considered years ago. That stadium was built by a Premier League team with the NFL in mind. One side of it has NFL locker rooms. The grass field rolls out, and there's your NFL field there year after year. So that's a huge commitment for a Premier League team. Wouldn't need to do that. They would be quite fine not to do that, but they see the value in it. It's a stunning stadium. But then I still like both. So there's nothing like, but maybe it's sentimental because the first games were played at Wembley. There's nothing like the vastness of Wembley, because there's another 25, close to 30,000 people in Wembley compared to Tottenham.
I mean, it would be, the second largest, or right there at the largest NFL stadium. Dallas is right around that 90,000.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, to have both is offers different experiences, and just the view of Wembley packed to the rafters looks amazing. But
yeah, you never get over that.
Right.
JP, we've seen it, nine times now.
Yeah.
And you never get over the bigness and the history of the place.
I mean, when just coming up either in a car, which is going to take you forever to get to Wembley on game day in a car. However, I've done it before. Or the train, the overground, the National Rail, or whatever, gets you off of the Wembley Stadium. When you first see that arch on the horizon,
you walk up Olympic Way.
You know you're seeing history.
Come on, the whole world's watching this game because of the time it's on, and the East Coast is the morning, the West Coast is early morning, but they might be up. Then even into Europe and going far east, the game is available, and that's a pretty incredible thing.
That's the other thing when you talk about the appeal of these games internationally and especially in Europe. You've opened up a whole new TV window in the US. You've got football at breakfast time.
And in Andy's room.
Yeah, apparently
that
the
as
Toy
well.
Story.
That was I'm a bit old fashioned, and I'm a little bit like, oh, what are they doing now? That was cool.
It was really cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
It was very, very cool.
Well, you're catering to youth, and it's all about growth.
Yep.
Growing in Europe, growing overseas, and growing up and growing with the youth market. They are far-sighted in this and not short-sighted.
I might have been the only person in that stadium that had never seen any Toy Story movies.
Wow, Jay.
So I didn't know what they were doing. I had
no idea.
Well, the Jags players were on board, weren't they?
Apparently so.
When Andy came in, they all fell over.
I found out after the fact.
It's easy at our age
to
forget that these guys were playing. they're still kids.
Yeah, that's right.
They're 21 to 27 years old, same as my son. My son grew up on the first 2 Toy Stories, and I thought it was really cool that the Jaguars players, they knew the story enough, and they were, they weren't too cool to do it. I thought that was really neat the way they did the Andy's Room celebration.
How is you mentioned jerseys of Trevor Lawrence, and I think we've talked about this before when you've come over to Jacksonville, but seeing it again on Sunday, the star power of Trevor Lawrence, we know what it can be and already is in the United States. He's on commercials all over the place.
Right.
Gatorade, Subway from time to time. The Head and Shoulders one has to be coming soon, I would think, the shampoo, and I mean at some point, John, but that's
Sure.
I'm not his agent, so I can't speak for him. We know what that is in the States. Does that translate in the UK? Is that a real thing here? Is it just kind of on the cusp since he's still new?
Yeah, so I'd say in terms of NFL fans, they kind of view him as that genuine star now. You know, they saw what he did in the playoffs. They saw him pacing up and down. He couldn't wait to get back on the field against the Chargers. Give me the football, get the ball back. So they know about Trevor Lawrence. I would say, in general, with sports fans, it's kind of on the cusp. You know, he's not an Odell Beckham or he's not a Patrick Mahomes, but he's well on the way. You know, and everything is trending in the right direction. I think he's the real deal. I spoke to Doug Peterson in the summer. He said that exact phrase to me. He's the real deal. So I think he's getting there, and I think but certainly already in the NFL community. I'm sure it was the same in the States, right? Even here in the UK, his arrival into the NFL was long awaited, right? People were talking about him 4 or 5 years before he even got into the league.
Sure.
That was the same over here among the NFL fans, and he's just backed it up, especially the last 2. Well, not the first year as much, but that was a difficult circumstance. He showed us everything we thought he was going to be last year.
And a big game. I don't know if it's fair because I don't know if the Jaguars' offensive line-wise, is quite ready to let Trevor do this yet. But playing a big-time quarterback, I know they don't play each other, but measuring stick games like this, JB, at some point he's going to outplay one of these guys in a game and give himself that moment. It'd be great if it was this week. Again, I don't know. The Jaguars obviously need to take a step for him to do that this week. But it's an opportunity. At some point he's going to do it, but that will be a big step, but plenty of opportunities for him to do that this year.
I edit the game day magazines for the Jags and for the international games, so all of the London games, all of the Germany games.
The game program.
The game program, yeah, so game program. And in the article about Trevor, we wrote about, there's Patrick Mahomes, and then you're looking at the others, like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. I genuinely believe Trevor is in that group. And you only sort of stay in that group. You start to knock each other off every now and then, right? So you've got to have those kind of wins against those elite quarterbacks. I do believe he can be in that group. I think there's Mahomes, who's the gold standard, of course, with everything he's achieved.
Well, Mahomes had to finally beat Tom Brady and those guys to kind of jump into that echelon.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think, but Trevor's in that conversation with all those really good quarterbacks in the NFL.
All right, we'll come back in a moment. Our final segment ahead. The floor is open for fan questions. If you want to come join us in the final few moments, we'll get our final thoughts ahead of the Week 5 matchup, the Buffalo Bills and the Jacksonville Jaguars, coming up at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this Sunday in London. And this is Huddle Up. Welcome back. It's Huddle Up. Lucky Brooks is in Los Angeles. We are in London. JP Shadrick, John Oehser, and Neil Reynolds of Sky Sports. What are you doing, John? You all right over there with a headset? Getting ready for the final moments of
Put on a headset, JP.
Huddle Up. Love it.
Professional show business.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Hey, the Jaguars coming up against the Bills at Spurs this Sunday. And Huddle Up is brought to you by Fields Auto Group Jacksonville. Step up to luxury. FieldsAuto.com. Looking forward to seeing the stadium, looking forward to seeing the Bills and how the Jaguars perform in the big environment against perennial AFC power. We've heard that already. The Jags feel like they're kind of on the cusp of that and getting better moving along. We're live in a pub, so we have an audience, and they're drinking beer. We've got a fan question. So thanks for coming up. What's your name and where are you from?
Yes, Peter from Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
A big shout-out to my son Killian in Atlanta. Killian in Jacksonville listening on the radio, and all of our fans and family and friends watching online. But,
awesome, man.
Question is, this first time the Jags have done it. You guys talked about the international game being here and team playing twice. But is this the norm? Are the Jags going to be coming here multiple times, or other teams going to be coming multiple times? I think Neil's talked about a little bit of how this game's growing in the future, and it's not going backwards. So is the next step that teams come over for multiple weeks and play a home game and a road game regularly as we go in the near future starting? And is that over under?
Yeah, I think it's got a chance to. I mean, I think some of will be determined what happens next week, meaning the Jaguars are here and now they get their body clock on UK time. Well, they go back next week and you readjust, and then you've got a game the following Sunday. It hasn't necessarily hurt going this direction, if that makes sense. How that sort of plays out might have something to do with it. I think it's in the future. I mean, I definitely think it's coming. Will it be a regular thing? Will one team do it every year? I don't know if it'll be that much into the routine, but if it starts to feel like it makes sense, meaning if the Jags come over here and do it, and they're like, hey, it was just like preparing for a regular game, no real kickback on the back end, then I think I think teams would be open to it, because the big reason that more teams don't want to do two over here is because you don't want to give up two home games necessarily. Like a lot of teams don't want to give up home games in the gate. Well, if they're already giving up one, would they be amenable to being the road team in the next one? I've got to think they would, JP.
Yeah, I mean, Shad Khan, I think there was an article I read today that mentioned, hey, if it works well and all those metrics are right and the money's right on the home game and the success in the field and everything, why wouldn't you do a home and road? But this is the big test coming up this week, Neil. And I think from Shad Khan's perspective, you know, I don't know if he would necessarily like all these other teams on his turf, so to speak, in the UK.
And
right?
you know, the NFL would love that if teams start getting territorial about it and wanted to be the ones that are coming back time and time again. I think if it happens, I think the Jags are going to lead the way on it.
I think a lot of teams are bending that. I mean, I think a lot more teams are looking at the Jaguars saying they had the right idea. How do we sort of – I mean, you saw the international territories this summer.
Yeah.
I think a lot more teams are gearing toward that now.
And that is – I think in essence, you know, the global markets program, which is where teams have the rights to market themselves in certain countries, those teams are all looking at what the other teams are doing. What are the Jags doing in the UK? Well, what are the 49ers doing? Okay, well, let's have a look and see what the Bears are doing. Well, the Bears are doing that. Well, we're going to try this. The NFL is going to encourage all of that competition, and certainly the same with the games. I think quite strongly that we're going to start to see a team do it back to back. Wembley allows that opportunity, so the team doesn't have to come to Tottenham both times. I think we're going to see it quite a lot.
Thanks for the question. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming over, too.
It was a pleasure. I think this weekend I'm going to bring my bingo card with NFL jerseys to the game.
You'll see some obscure ones.
Make a drinking game out of that one. So.
Enjoy. Thanks a lot for the time.
Guys.
Appreciate that. Looking forward to the game, of course, this week. It is an interesting thought because I think the Jaguars added the Republic of Ireland as one of their places they can go out and do some advertising, some community aspects, things. They're going to start building on that. I think them and the Steelers are involved in the Republic of Ireland. The Jaguars were really kind of the first to commit to the UK, and that whole program has kind of changed the whole dynamic for teams throughout Europe. Right?
Yeah, I think it's led the way. It's encouraged other teams to kind of look and see what the Jags UK team are doing here on the ground, whether that be week to week or year in and year out. I think it's certainly plenty of competition there amongst the teams, and I think actually I think there's less trepidation about that going back part now. Certainly from an NFL league point of view, they believe teams can do it because you get back to the US. Probably from a UK game now, their lunchtime kickoffs, in much better shape than if you're coming back from Seattle or San Francisco or some other places in the US. So it's not quite as big a deal. You remember when the Jags first came, they would play on a 6 o'clock kickoff, so they couldn't get out necessarily that night.
Right.
So then they leave on the
we're
Monday.
aware, Neil.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I remember.
Now it's probably wheels up by 7 p.m.
Yeah.
UK time.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem. I just know that's something they want to check that box and make sure it's not. I'm with you. I think it's coming. I don't know if there will be a team that routinely does it all the time, but I think various teams will definitely do it.
All right, let's wrap with our final thoughts about the game this Sunday. The two most frequent international travelers in the NFL. The Jaguars playing their 11th international game this Sunday. They are 5-5, all games here in London. Buffalo playing their 8th international game. They are 1-5 in Toronto all time and 0-1 in London. That loss, of course, against the Jaguars and the great Blake Bortles comeback game, back and forth.
Alan Hearns diving into the end zone. That was a brilliant game.
It was, the Jags had a big lead, blew the lead, and then rallied back to win at the end.
Alan Hearns told me the following summer, I don't know if you guys knew that, because he dived into the turf, came up with all the classic old shot with all the bits of grass hanging in the helmet. He had a grass allergy. So it's like sneezing on the sidelines afterwards. But
it's funny.
What a win it was. And actually, I think the Jags need to muddy up this game if they're going to win. Make it a bit ugly, like they did when they beat the Bills before.
Maybe the Bills have some grass allergies.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, it's a natural turf.
Maybe they have some turf allergies.
Yeah. Hey, so, 7th NFL game at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The first London game, that's a rematch of a London game before coming up. That's the game we talked about. And it's the Jaguars' first game as the designated road team in any London game. So you think they muddy it up, run the ball, play good defense?
Yeah, I think especially defense. We'll see what difference, if there's differences along the offensive line. I think it's a huge challenge. And I think if the Jags don't get this one, it's not a massive setback on the season because that AFC South is up for grabs. But if you're looking bigger picture, it's the Jags team that went to the final 8. Right? This is a Jags team that's got to start knocking off those. Mm-hmm. You had Kansas City on the ropes, and you kind of let them off the hook. So it's a huge game from that aspect. I still think Buffalo probably just a bit too powerful. But if the Jags are going to win, they're going to scrap it out a bit.
So at some point, if you're the Jags, at some point when you're trying to ascend, these are ascension games. These are Saban games. And like Neil said, it's not must win. If they lose, they're 2-3. They have the Colts the next week. You can get right back in that mix, and everybody's 2-2 in that. They can breathe a little easier, but if they're going to be what they want to be, at some point they got to start winning these games. And, before the season, everybody said, well, they don't have to play the Bills at home. This is one they ought to be able to go get. Looks tougher now. I'm with Neil. I think it's a big ask the way the offense is playing right now. But, JP, at some point, I think anybody watching the Jaguars believes that the offense is going to struggle all season, right? I mean, I think they're going to get it. Mm-hmm. If they get it this week, there's a shot.
Especially, if you look at Buffalo, it's huge. We haven't really talked about that. Tre'Davious White.
Oh, yeah, the corner, yep.
Calvin Ridley. Christian Kirk, Evan Engram.
If they have time to get it to them.
Yeah. So that we know, I agree with you, John. This is an offense that everyone's kind of salivating about in the summer. It can still be that, and if it's that on Sunday.
Are you ready to lock it? A Jags win?
Well, I've twisted myself around all over the place.
No. Now you're like, maybe if they could do it.
JP, I'm perfectly comfortable sat on this fence. It's lovely.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to come out. I don't want to come on your show and flat out pick the Bills. So the best I can do is sit on the fence.
No, I think it's very fair to say the Bills are favored. In the way the Jaguars have played, it's hard to pick them. We keep waiting for that breakout moment. When it comes, they're going to be tough. Maybe it comes this week.
All right, we'll have another show here tomorrow. Jaguars Happy Hour and the Doug Peterson Show. I'll catch up with the Jags head coach tomorrow up at Hanbury Manor and bring it back to you. We'll air that at, 5 o'clock London time is the Happy Hour show. My time zone.
You have no idea what time it is. Just
whatever.
Check with Bucky.
Yeah, right. He'll be at 5 o'clock. So be here. If you're in London, come join us at 5 o'clock at the Pavilion End, Watling Street, Mansion House, the closest underground stop. St. Paul's not far away as well. So get down here early. We'll be in the basement. We'll have 2 hours of programming coming up tomorrow. And then Saturday, another pub party right here in this place again. John, you missed the one last Saturday. It was awesome. And then it'll be even bigger and better this time around.
Well, then, because I'll probably be here. That's why
it's bigger and better. They all were asking about you.
John had his game face on. He was getting ready. Couldn't be in the pub.
I was ready. We got a big dub at it.
Yeah.
Next day, too.
Yeah, that's what happened. And then, of course, Sunday, 2:30 kickoff. Neil, thanks for the time. Great to see you, man.
Always. Thank you.
Neil Reynolds, Sky Sports with us. For John Oehser and our entire crew, I'm JP Shadrick. Thank you for watching. Thanks for coming out to the pub. It's Huddle Up.